Hi everyone, this is I think lesson 5 and it's going to be on how to use sliders to show movement in your graphs. So here I put in just a basic y equals sine of x. Now normally I could change the amplitude by adding a 3 here or adding a 7, right? And that's going to stretch it much bigger by changing the amplitude. Well, instead of adding a number, I could add a letter. I'm going to put in an M here. Notice right below it, it put add a slider. So if I click on this, it puts an M equals to 1 here, but there's a scale from -10 to 10 here. Now I can drag this dot and notice it changes my amplitude. So that's an easy way if you want to stretch or shrink a graph and you're not sure how to do it. Put a slider in first to kind of let you find where it is that you want to stretch or shrink it to. Or you can also, on the left here, there is a play button. If I play that, it will now continuously move that slider or move that amplitude. And you can change it in different ways. Right below that play button, look at these 2 arrows, right? If I choose those right now, notice it's moving on this slider back and forth. If by choosing this, I can now change it to just one direction. So now it's going, starting from -10 and going to -10 instead of going back and forth. Or this will allow me to move it just once and then it will stop. So it'll do one cycle and then stop. Down here, this one says plays it indefinitely, which I'm not sure how much that is different than the first one. But down here, I can also change the speed of it. So if we're moving this, right, I can also change the speed to slow it down, right, or I can speed it up, right, so it's really spinning by. Okay, so let's look at some of the other sliders I can add to my sine equation. All right, so I can also, I'm going to turn this off for a second, I can also change the period. So I'm going to add another slider, n, right, for the period in there. And now, if I play this one, right, the period goes in and out. It gets smaller and bigger. That actually looks kind of like an accordion. And I can also add a slider. Change this to about 1 to shift it. Right, if I add a x minus p in here, what do you think that p is going to do? How is that going to change the graph? Do you remember your trig graphing transformations? That should move it, you got it, left and right. Right, so if I add the p in here, now notice it moves left and right. And when you look at this, that kind of reminded me of waves. So we could play, right, all 3 of these, and you see a lot of different motion, and then you really need to go in there and play around with, you know, what's the type of motion. Wow, that's really crazy in there because it's moving quite quickly. Play around with those to come up with what you want. So down here, I'm going to turn this off. Down here, I created one. Notice here it looks exactly the same except that it's shifted down 2 points. Now if I turn this on, I also shaded below. So now this to me, you know, looks like waves that are in here. Okay, it's moving. I changed my period to be quite small. Notice it's only from 0.2 to 1. I changed my amplitude. It's also quite small, from 0.5 to 1. And I made the movement much slower. If you look at the movement on any of these, you can see this is a movement of just 0.15 of the original speed. And then if you want to even add more detail, I could copy and paste this and change the color. If I change it to blue, it doesn't do anything, but remember that the layering of the colors, if I now put this below my other one and maybe slide it down 1, I now have something that really looks, you know, like waves going on there. And I could do, you know, layer upon layer upon layer with slightly getting darker colors. So there's where I kind of played around to make something look like waves. Right. You can also do some other changes by, here I added just a line, right? And I put in slope and intercept. And again, I don't know, if that movement makes you think of anything, but there is just playing around with a line. And here are a couple other quick movements that I saw. Here is the red, if I go back to that, right, that's just a circle right down here, right, that's opening and closing. The green I was playing around with, that's an ellipse that's moving around. I did an inverse trig, so down here instead of doing y equals sine x, I did x equals sine y. And when I play this, and I moved it only in the one direction, right, that could almost look like, actually I didn't do it in one direction, but maybe you could do something with rain or hair moving like this. And then the last one, see this little red up here? I did a parabola, and I was trying to make something look like a smile. So now if I press play here, I changed the number out front to stretch and shrink it. If I press play, you can see there is my smile. I just did it very subtly, but hopefully you're looking right there. And I just did it once, so it was a quick, I'll do it one more time, right? Play, look right here. Right, and so as it's going up, it's just a quick little one-time smile. So those are all different ways to add sliders and play with motion in your graphs.